Welcome to Spiritual World, where we talk about all things related to spirituality so you can feel empowered in your day to day life. My name's Jean. I'm a channeler, a Akashic record reader, and a past life regression therapist. I started my journey by accidentally landing into a cult, and after a massive psychic attack, I came out and survived this whole ordeal and discovered my passion in spirituality. Now, let's begin. Hello, hello, my friends. I hope you're doing well today. Today's interview talks about the interview with Orion Mott. He is a healer. Not only he healed my psychic attack, he has been there very often during the ups and downs of my life. I cannot express how much I'm grateful for this man, for he has not only saved my life, when I was under psychic attack, and it was so intense and I could not sleep at night. I would wake up in stupor, and also he was helping me out because he has such a heart of gold, and he has helped me when I came here in Vancouver and very lost in my life. So I want to introduce you to him. His name is Orion Mott. He is a medical intuitive energy healer, a concussion therapy healer, and a heart clearing counselor. He has spent 15 years working to heal concussion and brain tumor, such as eye trauma, brain fog, tinnitus, ADHD, and more. He uses energy neuroplasticity to heal bodies. He serves a lot of pro athletes such as NHL players. Now, because of the major technical difficulties that I have had with this podcast, I'm sorry, I have to say it starts right in the middle of the interview. So I hope you don't mind about that. So let's begin. How you managed to go into the energy healing modality when you were in bodybuilding?
Well, yeah, no, it wasn't bodybuilding; it was personal training. But it started off with coming in with injuries. As people came in with a sore back or a broken heart, or the normal human issues that people have, disease, loss. A lot of people we were carrying grief because they lost loved ones, and then their body was not reacting properly to exercise, and they just needed more a softer touch. I was able to do energy healing, counseling, basically what I do now, but I was able to do that with my clients. And yeah, I fixed a few broken backs and shoulders, worked with grief, worked with diseases, worked with cancers, concussions. I worked with sort of naturally. I didn't really think about it. It just seemed to be a natural thing that I could do. And eventually I got very tired of sitting there watching people run around the track. And I got more interested in fixing them when they were hurt. So I ended up kind of having a very strata of clientele that were, we'll say, more sensitive people that had sensitive problems. And we would defer from fitness to counseling, or from fitness to energy healing as part of the thing we did, the part of our relationship. And it wasn't long before I said, hey, I think I want to do this full time. And that was, I had been doing energy healing for about 15 years quietly. But for the last 7 years, I've
Yeah.
officially come out and said, "Yeah, I'm an energy healer. I'm doing this work." But I'd been doing it for a long time with my clients years before then. I just wasn't ready to
I
put that out to the world yet, you know?
Oh, I know. I understand. Like, I think, especially when we work in spirituality, there is a moment that you have to come out of your shell. And I think that is so hard to come out of it. So, I'm going to transition for a moment just to understand, how did you manage to transition outward into, how did you manage to break your shell? Was it hard for you? What did you think was the,
The catalyst. I was out of a marriage, and I was dating various lovely ladies, and I met a lady who was an energy healer. That's what she did in Toronto. She was very well known, very respected for many years. I think she's been doing this since 2001 as her own business. And I watched how she ran her business and watched how she ran her website. And she was my Reiki teacher. She taught me how to do Reiki, and so
yeah.
I mean, officially, I've been doing it for many years, but I got my official Reiki masters with her. And I watched how she did that, and at that point, I was doing just concussion work, healing with concussions. And over time, I sort of stepped into that role as an energy healer in various disciplines. Um, what I specifically want to do was which was work with brain issues and working with emotional trauma, which is what I specialize in. And it took many years to sort of really refine to what it is I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a past life regressionist, and I didn't want to do only channeling. I wanted to do the things that felt natural to who I am. And sort of as I put that out there, I found the people that were looking for that particular service through my website.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So, in your line of service, can you tell me where do you think that most of the disease come from? Because I think especially in the current world, like a lot of people carry like cancer or carry all kind of diseases, and sometimes it's or brain injury and things like that, and we never know where it comes from. And I wanted to unravel and understand a bit more
Well, I'm
about
going to
it.
speak specifically from Toronto, where we are, because people here very different than in Vancouver or very different than I was recently in California, very different energy down there too. So I'm going to speak specifically about the
Yeah,
people from Toronto
very.
because that's what I know. That's who I work with mostly. And we all have each culture has its own denials, we'll just say. Okay. So understanding that Toronto is a very old culture. It is a mixed bag of native English and French, but it's old English, old emotional repressed English, and it's over 200
Oh,
years old. However old Canada is, this was a
yeah.
British colony, so we have to look at the culture that carries on through the generations, that still carries that emotional repression, and that is part of culture here. So the work I do, the issues I find in health specifically is compartmentalized emotion, emotional denials. We'll just put it. So you have a father that leaves you, and you have um, a lot of anxiety about men or them leaving, or the idea of abandonment. And people don't want to feel like they're an abandoned person, so they take that and they push that down in their body. So they push it down to their lungs, and then their lungs start getting irritated because that feeling in the lungs starts getting irritated. So they become smokers because that smoke helps them dissipate
Oh,
that feeling in their lungs. It blocks out that feeling. So that's one example. So when
oh
I'm
my
looking at something like
God.
lung cancer and I'm going into the lungs and I feel,
Mhm.
okay, there is the emotion, the anger, the anxiety, but I go deeper inside that and the base of it, and I find that there's grief here. And you pull out the grief, well, then the cancer and all the other feelings can unravel once you find the cause, once you find the emotion, or I like to say the emotional denial that's trapped in the body in a certain location. So diseases here specifically deal with emotions that people don't feel comfortable by bringing to their heart and letting go, or they don't know how to let go, or they haven't been shown as a culture how to let go. But this is cultural. If you go to someplace like Jamaica, people just express what they feel. Or you go to France, people express what they feel. Or you go to Italy, they express what they feel. They don't hold it back, so they don't have the same diseases
Yeah.
because they don't have the same denials emotionally. They might be more comfortable showing affection.
Oh,
They're more comfortable being in their heart. Might be more comfortable expressing their feelings that we as a society here in Toronto can't or don't as much.
oh, so you're saying in Toronto, people are really suppressing
Oh
a
yeah,
lot of their emotion, but is it because it's the 200 years ago carried on ancestral um, thinking that that's why they build up into that kind of
sure.
suppression?
Think
Or
of think of in ancient
oh,
times in Europe, for instance, where you have French culture
mm,
and you have Portuguese culture, and the root is the same culture. I mean, historically, there was a time where French and Portuguese were Latin offshoots, but the cultures became different. They had different experiences. Had different wars, different famines, different issue, different ideas around food and culture and family values. Languages changed and diverged into unique cultures. Even though they're related, they're unique. Very much they're little fiefdoms of understanding, as society understandings. So we in Toronto have this traditional culture of, we'll say, holding your emotions back and acting polite and having deep-seated anxiety or anger towards people who have more than you or have achieved more than you, and they compare themselves and they want to fancy your car, or this is what people talk about in Toronto, because they're suppressing their emotion and they're looking around at everybody else and they're having judgments about what other people have, what they don't have. And I would say this is a very heady culture because of that. Whereas they don't go in their heart and say, you know, good for them having more, good for them for having greatness and being inspired by them. No, Toronto, The people here repress that, and they get vindictive, or they get angry, or they hold these emotions because of other people. And truly, we're meant to be ourselves. We're not meant to be anything like another person next to us. We're meant to be our individual self, and all those benefits come forward when you are yourself. So that's sort of roundabout going about it, but that's how emotion sits in the body, and that's the diseases I work with that relate to emotions. And everywhere in the body is going to be a different organ and a different expression of disease because it hits our body differently.
I think I'm gonna make a comment there that during the time that I live in Toronto, I did have that kind of even myself, I would be comparing and having that kind of emotion, and I didn't know it was well. I had a lot of work to work on myself, but also to see that this is the overall arching um, mentality there. It brings me quite a bit of a better clarity, as I say. But can you tell me how do you happen to clear out? Let's say we're using the case of the lung
Okay.
diseases or different kind. How do you clear out
Well,
this form of?
first thing I need to do is get
Uh,
the heart clearing, which you mentioned in the intro. So when they go in their heart, there's the bully when they were 15 years old that bullied them in school. There's the boyfriend that broke up with them and slept with their best friend. I mean, there's the events in our life, and people hold them in their
yeah,
heart as anger, resentment, whatever. And there's a whole
yeah,
host of these things. It's usually about mom, dad, and sister and brother. I'd say those are the common ones. Those are the most common people that show up
yeah.
there. But then ex-husbands show up, ex-wives show up, bullies show up. Even though like their dog Fluffy that died when they were 6, and they were devastated,
Oh,
and they felt abandoned because that was their favorite dog when everyone else was not loving them. Whatever shows up in the heart is valid for them, and they find I take them in their heart themselves, and they find the problem. They find the people, the issues. I get them to. I'm just the garbage man. I just get them to pull it out and dump it in the ground. Pull out whatever's in their heart, and when the heart's clean and clear, then we go exploring through their body for their cancers, their diseases, their issues, their chronic pain, chronic back pain, chronic knee pain, whatever it is. And as I get them to, just like they read their own heart, to read their liver, their gallbladder, their stomach, their spleen, whatever. As they read, let's say you're talking about lungs, they read their heart, they read their lungs on the right side, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is my father abandoning me, or this is my uncle abusing me, or this is my mom who never loved me, or whatever it is." That shows up, that resentment that shows up in that disease. They find it, and same as we do with the heart, we bring it to the heart, breathe it out through the lungs. It only takes a couple minutes to do, and once they've released that emotion,
oh,
that disease has nothing, no
wow.
foundation to hold on to it. So what we do is I mean, specifically for cancer, we work with the thymus a lot, waking up the thymus, which is the immune system. So we work with the heart, we work with the thymus, we shine that unconditional love into that disease, and that disease starts to change. The chemistry starts to change, because what the body does with disease is it sort of overwhelms it, just like in a video game where you have one side overwhelm the enemy and just surround it from all different corners. That's how our body's immune system works. So we basically, with love, we overwhelm it with our love, and that causes the body to physically do the same thing. And that's when the diseases start to come down. Now, I can't say this works in every case. If someone has stage 4 cancer, I help make them comfortable. Help make them
Hmm.
give them show them that they can connect to their life and see the continuity of how they live their life. But if it's stage 1 or stage 2, it's very localized. Absolutely, we can do some work on that. Um, yeah.
Can I ask a question? So what you're trying to say is that everything is coming from the heart. So are you saying, like, for example, I'm going to try to put it in that kind of context that, let's say, the problem is seated, let's say guilt, let's say anger,
Okay.
let's say feeling like a victim, like it's localized into the heart and it manifests in different parts of the body and thus creates the pain
No,
point. So
no,
for
no, no, no. It
example,
doesn't localize in the heart. The heart is
well,
completely different. It's the localization of
mhm.
the pain is actually in our physical body. Um, when it
Oh,
comes to emotional pain from the past, people and events, that's in the heart. That would be, yeah. So that
okay.
would, okay. Yes, I can see that would be resentment or whatever. It's usually the same thing in the heart: is they didn't love me properly, or I didn't love them, or or they abused my love, whatever, or they took my childhood. That's a common one. There's these themes,
Mm-hmm.
but it's related to that person, and all this negative emotion is, you know, I'll give you an example. I'm angry because they didn't love me properly. Below that, the echo of that is I wanted them to love me because I love them. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
return my love, and that's where the anger and all that resentment comes from. And when they know the foundation of that's love, they let that go. They pull them out and put unconditional love to themselves and let those people go. But when it comes to the actual diseases in the body, it's the heart is the location, just like the brain has thoughts and it has focus. The heart is the center for the natural what's the term? We call it the innate. Chiropractor we'll use that term. Chiropractic. They call it, when they release the spine, they call it releasing the innate. But the innate body wisdom is centered in the heart, and it would be like the mind of the heart, if you will. And its job is to connect to the body. So
Oh.
when you have spontaneous remission of a disease, someone has a disease, and the cancer's there. Or we're using cancer. Use that example. So the cancer's there in the
Mm-hmm.
body, and then suddenly they have this a magnificent experience or a strange experience. Their body's shaking and they feel like a rapture from God. And they wake up the next day and they find out the cancer is completely gone. Well, what's actually doing that is a combination of the heart and the soul. The soul and the heart having a communication saying, yeah, well, gotten what we need from this disease, time to let this thing go. And those things happen because the heart and the soul connect together. But the heart is the one that connects to the body, and basically it's the interface to the body. So when we connect with the heart, we can connect to our body and connect to our diseases in a sort of visualized, felt sense way, if you will. And that's the language of communication.
So there was a moment that you said that the heart will connect with the soul. What do you mean by that? The connection of the heart to the soul. Like that's the part
Okay.
that I want to know
I want
more.
you to think of that. I'm going to give you an analogy because the best way of explaining this is through analogy. Let's is to go with that analogy. So let's say for this life, you're the performer on stage. Okay. You're the actor in the
Hmm.
play. The
Yeah.
soul is the audience member. It's involved.
Mm.
It's mildly entertained. Okay. It's the soul is truly who you are. This body
Yeah.
is the show. It's the movie. It's the excitement. It's the play. You're the actor in the play.
Yeah.
So it sits back and watches you. And, it's busy with other things. It plays with its phone. It eats its popcorn and talks to its neighbor. It's watching you, but it's not really engaged in a direct kind of way. It gives you the space as your character to play the villain, to play the good person, the healer, or the sick person, or the athlete, or the intellectual. Whatever you choose to play, whatever role you play, there's no issue with that. So it sits back and it watches your life and it stays and does its own thing. But however, when you say, hey, soul, come on stage. I want you to help me with this thing. I want you to help me with this part that I'm having trouble with. And it gets on stage with you, or in this case, goes into your body and says, for a time, I'll help you out. I'll open this up. I will connect with you. I will, fix this thing out or to fix this thing. Inspiration is just as important as actual direct healing. Sometimes you need to reach out to that doctor or that, in my case, the energy healer to work on that particular issue. And then you can release that thing and then you'll find the right doctor and then they'll cure your what. So it doesn't always have to be direct. It can be indirect, but it's sort of, I call it, there's this, I watched this Disney show called The Mandalorian and they have this great line. They say, this is the way. And with the soul, invited in, it has that this is the way. This is the way to that answer. This is the way to that understanding that you need. Or in some cases, the suffering is the way for you to find what you need from that suffering. So you have to trust that the soul will give you everything you need in this life. But at the same token, you can do things faster if you bring the soul in a dynamic, personal way. Of religion of God. This is your own godliness, if you will, pulling into your body. And the more the soul pulls into the body, the more the body gets comfortable with the soul pulling in the body. And then these magical changes happen as you hold more soul in the body. And these are the healers, these are the teachers, these are the masters. And what they did is there's no gap between the soul and the body. And that's why they're always in a
Wow.
channeled state. That's why they're always, and some of the gurus that I've listened to or the healers I've met have this real powerful energy field that is always flowing into their body. I'm always aware of this. And that's what gives this person those magical abilities of knowing this or abilities of healing is pulling that soul in a dramatic way into their bodies.
So how do we do that? How, Orion?
Well, it's so when you connect with your soul, it's not about thinking. Thinking has so little effect on our physical reality. Wishful thinking, no, no, that doesn't work. It has to be a visualized, felt sense started from the heart. I'll give you an example. Someone has writer's block. I get this one. So someone is a fabulous writer and they've got writer's block and they can't write. They've written half their book and they're stuck. Okay, and they see me and
Mhm.
they need some movement. Okay,
Yeah.
so for some reason there's been a blockage. So we go into their heart. We do a heart clearing. We pull out all the issues that's been going on, and from their heart, then we reach out to the soul. We physically reach out to the soul, which is about usually about 12 inches away from the physical body, and we negotiate with the soul. We say, okay, soul, um, I'm going to connect with you. I'm going to send you love and connection. I'm going to invite you in to my heart, to my wound, to my issue, to my whatever it is that people are carrying. They invite the soul in, and the soul will, as the house guest, step in for a moment, look in the door, look around, give you some advice, and then step back out. And each time you draw the soul in more and more, it stays for longer. It can hold more longer. The soul is a very high frequency compared to the physical body. So it takes some, say, on both parts of the soul and the body, a time for interconnectivity so that they can maintain that relationship. So channels who channel for years will always kind of be in the channeled state because they're so used to it. And that's another version of soul connection.
Wow, that's like super interesting because I think so. So does that mean like sometimes like you're walking on the street, you have this inner knowingness of things, so that's your soul trying to talk to you? Is
Sometimes,
this it?
sometimes. Uh, you'd have to give me the special. There's so many different. There are so many different ways that happens. We don't know if synchronicity is set up by the soul, or we don't know if synchronicity is set up by someone else's soul, or we don't know if synchronicity is set up by both souls. We don't. I mean, that's that. You'd have to sort of go by case basis. And then there's random chance. There's still random chance on top of all those things.
Random chances.
That can happen. Right place at the right time. I happened to randomly reach out to someone who looked interesting on LinkedIn. She just had an interesting face. I don't know. I see lots of people on LinkedIn, and I clicked on her to connect, and I don't know why. And she's like, "It's so strange. My daughter's really dealing with concussions, and here you are, and here I am." And there were so hundreds of
Oh
people on
my
LinkedIn,
God.
but her face looked familiar somehow. And I don't know what I was reading on that, but I was like, "Oh, I just feel like connecting with this person." And the person said, "That's very interesting. We really need your help. My daughter just had a concussion. She's in the hospital, and we'd like to do some sessions with you." So, I don't know how that works. Was that me? Was that her? Was that her daughter? Was that some oversoul that's connecting us all together? Is this woman another aspect of my own being? Is she a part of my soul separated in different lives? I wouldn't know the answer right off the bat, but I do know that right place at right time means that individuals are in that sense of flow in their life where the things are happening more effortlessly versus
Yeah.
when you're struggling and struggling and nothing happens. You know what I mean? Which is the other half of when you're not in flow with yourself, right? Not in flow with your life.
Very true. Very true. Just talking about that, since Orion was talking about this, that's how I managed to find Orion. I saw his picture and I said, this is the person I have to reach out to. So Orion, I think this is very interesting to learn a lot about the soul because I know you connect to your soul regularly and you're a very strong channeler and you're also a very strong healer. My question is that some people say you have to feel your gut, but some people say feel your heart. How do you distinguish what would be the best medium between the two?
Oh, I'd say there's the mind as well. You can't forget the mind. So when I tell people okay, so someone comes in really angry, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to leave my husband. That's a common one. I think comes in, she's like, he's a narcissist. I'm going to leave him. Like, okay, and I'm like, okay, what does your heart say? Well, my heart's angry. What does your head say? Head say, well, this is not a really good idea right now. I got two little kids. I'm not working. It's going to be a big fight. And then what does
Mhm.
your gut instinct say? It says, well, maybe there's a chance. The gut says maybe there's a chance for working this out, maybe trying to make this thing
Okay.
work, maybe
Mhm.
uncovering what it is I'm holding, or maybe he'll uncover what he's holding that's causing us to have this rift. So I always tell people to check in with all three. I see them as like cowboys, the head's leading, then there's the gut instinct, and then the heart's way far behind. And I like to say I want the cowboys riding side by side. They all have their place. They all have their moment. They all have their say. And with any big decision, I say sit with it and make sure all of them are in agreement first. All in agreement that's a
Oh.
time to make a big change, not based on a gut
Oh.
instinct, because your gut might be wrong. It might be fearful,
Oh.
or it might be, who knows. But having all three, I call it a check-in. You check it with your head. What does your head say? What does your heart say? What does your gut say? And gut is really the first two chakras. With the gut are three chakras, which is all
Oh.
about me. The first three chakras are about I am, I have, I can do, and that's all about the self. And so it's
Yes.
really the gut instinct is all about what's good for the self, and what's good
Mm.
for the self might not agree with the head, might not agree with the
Oh.
heart. And so sometimes that's yes, they should leave, and sometimes I've had them where she says he's a narcissist. So this is a funny story. I've actually done a couple of these. I say, well, here's what I want you to do. Before you leave your husband and call him a narcissist and find out that he's not in his next relationship and then have anxiety for the fact that you still have feelings for him and you're not together. I said, I want you to go over to him. I want you to put your hand on his heart, take his hand, put it on your heart, look him in the eyes, and be in your heart and connect with his heart, and then start speaking. She comes back to
Oh.
me about a month later and she says, yeah, we both cried. We released all our crap and we're madly in love. And for 20 years, I never knew who my husband was. But by putting his hand in his heart, I got him there and got to feel who he was. He's not a narcissist. I always and put him down, and he was always fighting me, and he pulled inside out of fear. And she told me this whole thing unfolded for the fact all she did was connect with his heart. So that's an example
Wow.
of not having a heart connection with somebody. In their head, they were great. They had these businesses together. They're so connected through the kids. They were good in a way, but the hearts were closed because for whatever reason, she put him down, and whatever reason, he ran away emotionally.
Oh
And they
my
had this
God.
secondary relationship that was carried on for years. So I'm just saying, when you connect with the heart, you can find more information. You can find out more truth and more honesty in a relationship. That's heart based, not head based. And I'd say that's a good chunk of Canadians here in Toronto that I see are all head people, and they have all these ideas about who that person is. And really, when they connect with their heart, it's an opening of things that were closed for many years. So,
It's super interesting because I think our mind is constantly on the chatter. How do you allow your mind? So sometimes some mind, some ego will be like coming out on the constantly. So how can you differentiate your mind and the heart? Like, how do you stop it? How do you,
well, the mind is I think, and the heart is I feel. Are you saying I
yeah.
think this, I think that, I think this? Or are you saying I feel this? I feel patterns. If you're a thinker or if you're a feeler, and that in your own words, you'll know that.
Oh my God, that is so powerful. It's,
I'm going to talk in terms of male and female
okay,
aspects of the being. Okay,
sure.
I don't walk around even though I was a personal trainer and have a black belt in martial arts. I don't walk around with this hyper masculine ego that I've got to express myself as a hypersexual man, or you know what I mean, like the things we see. I don't need. I walk with a bit of neutrality.
Yeah.
In certain moments, my daughter's crying. She did badly on a test, and I hug her. And at that particular moment, I'm holding that space, and I'm being compassionate, and I'm being the healer person, the lover, like the person who loves her, and that energy of love, and transforming that so she feels that intense love I have for her, and that the acceptance that she's doing well and she's being herself, and that she, like, for me, I'm taking that we'll call the feminine aspects and providing her with that sense of moment of love. Okay, and that particular, we'll say that's the more feminine thing, um, because that moment is there, and I'll be on a bus somewhere, and some guys acting up, some young punks acting up, and the bus driver's upset, and I have to be my powerful masculine self and make the guy sit down and shut up.
Oh,
And these are not the
wow.
particular
Do
moment.
that.
I step into my masculine role of being a strong male in protectorate mode for the situation, or if things are getting out of control where that person needs to be talked to, I will be the person that stands up and be very confrontational and make the person step back down if necessary.
Wow.
But those aren't, so I stay with neutrality until the situation affords my masculine self or my feminine self, or my healing traits or my masculine traits. I let the situation dictate. I don't walk around with a certain formula of this is how I interact with everyone every time.
Oh, so
Because if I was a strong, powerful, aggressive, in your face kind of person, that's not appropriate when my daughter needs me to be affectionate and give her a hug and tell her that she's worthy, right? It's a matter of finding the appropriateness of bringing that forward within myself. And I think I channel those aspects of my being in those particular moments. So I'm not doing any one thing. I'm allowing my best self to step forward in these different moments.
So, so,
That makes sense to you.
meaning that you accept that you have different kind of facets, and you allow the facet and the situation dictate which facets step forward.
Right.
Okay, and that would.
Right. So, yeah. So if you're doing channeling, you want to do the best channeling job you can. When you're going out to a party and going dancing, you want to have the most fun you can possibly have. And they're not divergent
Mhm.
on the personality. It's just in the moment, stepping forward and being the best version of yourself in that particular moment, doing that thing. If I'm doing the dishes, I want to do a very good job of scrubbing the dishes because that's where I'm stepping forward in that moment. I'm being very consciously aware that I'm cleaning in that moment. I'm going into that role of doing the best cleaning I can do. It's about being myself fully in that moment, doing the best job I can, whatever the job is, whatever the moment is.
So staying very centralized and very
Yeah,
focused in that
right,
specific moment is how you could achieve the sense of and allowing yourself to be your truest form of self. And then
right.
you will be able to hone in more on your self-worth. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Self-worth is us being our full self,
Oh,
not doing any particular one thing well.
but don't you ever have this sense of like self-doubt and your fear, and you're just like, so for example, like sometimes we work in the spiritual like field, and then we are like, uh you don't know if you should be charging. For example, I'll give an example that, for example, some of the Asian culture is like, well, you have this gift of like channeling, like, or you have this gift of something else, you should give it for free, and you should not. And
Well, when you go to the store and buy something, do you assume that it's for free?
no,
You go on a bus, do you assume that ride is going to be for free?
no.
It's just energy. We have to allow the natural energy to be what it's worth. That's all. You have to
Oh,
find out what your services are worth to that person and charge accordingly.
wow, that's so.
So somewhat about popularity. If someone's a very popular person and they have a 6 month waiting list, they'll probably charge a little more than someone who's available tomorrow. That's just supply and demand. That's just business culture.
Wow. I never.
But if your value is because you're healing a disease or changing someone's life, or and like I was saying, making a marriage work, what's that worth to someone? How much financial is that worth to someone of fixing something? And you charge accordingly to what that is. I'm not saying I don't receive tips because I have, if I've done something big,
Yeah.
but I charge what I feel is affordable. But at the same time, I want to have the availability for as many people as I can, but I have to also charge for my service because I can't do 10 hours of this work, so I have to be realistic in terms of my physical energy, in terms of what I charge. So, I
Oh.
mean, I can only work a few hours a day, so I have to charge accordingly to those few hours.
Oh, but that's so good though, because this provides me with much more understanding, and also in the space of spirituality, when a lot of people say like, no, well, this is a gift you have, you should give it for free and things like that. And I think I wanted to know. So I just said it was super interesting because um, a lot of time my ego loves to speak so much so that it will just keep on talking. And sometimes I just don't know if it's my heart talking, or it's my head talking, or it's my gut talking. And when you use that analogy of what you think and what you feel, it really allows me to see it from a different perspective.
So I'm gonna I come from a Buddhist background, and I'm a bit of a rebel. Okay, so I'm gonna completely go against the tenets of Buddhism, which is what shutting down the ego, cutting down the. I understand what people say about the ego, but the ego is inherently bad.
Mm.
The people I find that don't have health problems, that have very good health, very good immune systems, have strong egos.
Oh,
People
really?
who have no social anxiety, who could walk in and with flow and just affect a room, like
Mhm.
celebrities. And they walk in, everyone's taking pictures, everyone wants their autographs, and they're owning that energy. That's not inherently bad. That's recognition that I am a divine being, or they believe they're a divine being. That's not wrong. That's not bad. That's healthy. It's, can you have your heart being as big and as healthy as your ego? Can it be in balance with your heart? And if your empathy is as big as your understand that you are a divine being, then you understand that everyone else is a divine being as well, and there's no issue.
Oh. So basically, as long as you could synchronize, it's like
Yeah,
the word
yeah,
synchronize all three compartments, like the gut, the heart, and the mind,
yeah,
you will be able to. So it's actually good to have ego. I have been told on a constant basis that the ego is bad, so I
yeah,
always try to like kill my ego, and it never seems to work, and it always comes back stronger. So it's really
yeah.
interesting for me to understand that. Now I think besides that, I think as a spiritual person, sorry, I'm like deviating a little bit, I also want to talk a little bit about self-worth. I think so many times in our life, we as spiritual people, right, sometimes we do not feel like let's say you're not surrounded in the right crowd, or you feel that you're a bit outside of your right surrounding. Like when you are like you feel a bit alone as a spiritual person, how do you manage to be okay in that kind of state? How do you uh feel accepting of yourself, and how do you
Well,
allow
I
that to
think that's
unfold?
so for me, that was realizing that the things I was born with, the gifts I came in with, the ability to, counsel people, to hold space for people, to let them have their emotions, to let them have their experience without judgment, was sort of who I've always been. It's not doing anything different than who I've always been. It's just now I have skill sets to help them. I've trained in countless energy therapies and countless physical therapies, and I have a real strong background in anatomy and physiology and corrective exercise and all those things. I really have a good basis of understanding the physical body. So for me, having that foundation of knowing the body and then being able to look inside someone's body, I'm like, oh, here's a problem in your kidneys, or here's a problem in your ureter, or here's a problem in your ovaries. Because I understand structure of the body, for me, reading it is very clear. But everyone will have a different clarity. If someone is a talented writer and they channel their writing, they're meant to be a writer, and they're meant to write books and write stories because that's how they channel. That's how they're wired, so to speak. They're athletes. Their job is to take on that. Let's say a male athlete. I work with a lot of NHL players and soccer players and football players. They are using this powerful masculinity to express themselves, and all the men out there are like, "That's our guy. That's our man." And he's channeling that hyper masculinity to be powerful and tough and strong that everyone gets excited about, the gladiator, if you will. And he's channeling that hyper masculinity, and that's what he wants to be. We're all meant to be ourselves, fully ourselves, but not just one dimensional self, not just what we accept about ourselves or what we believe about ourselves, but really allowing ourselves to flow through and getting behind who we're meant to be. And as soon as that happens, the universe opens up many doors for more avenues of expression of that particular thing. And that'll
Wow.
happen until we decide we want to express something different.
So
You'll have an athlete that is a very strong athlete, and then they might become a painter, and they want to express different aspects of their being. And that's not wrong. That's just they're looking at different things that they're flowing with at that particular moment. So it really is just being yourself and allowing that natural process to happen.
wow. So basically when it comes to self-worth, it's more about being yourself and accepting. So are you saying that we're going to be okay to, even if people leave? I think to exert your voice as a spiritual person is can be a bit hard. So I find when you are in that type of space, um, and you're being surrounded by people like your family member or by friends that might not accept you for who you are, you just say, it's okay. I'm just going to channel the inner me. Or is that how you think it?
I don't think there's. I think it's healthy not to say I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that.
Oh,
As soon as you are doing something, it's not really flowing naturally. So
lucky because you get your twin flame. We don't get that. Like they told me no twin flame for you this life. And I'm just like, you are lucky. You get, because I find,
well, no, 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 no. I'm going to
I
disagree with
I
all that.
find
You have that if that's what you want. If that's where your focus is, then you'll get everything you want. You always get what you want. there is like, I'll give you an
I
example.
don't know.
Right now,
I'm negotiating some soul
I'm
contract
just
right
saying
now.
you don't have to do anything. I'm just saying that there I have a lot of people that say, "Hey, I want to meet my soulmate." All these people I met on the way to meeting Lisa were my soulmate. They just weren't their soulmate for marriage. They were soulmate
Mm.
for fun and excitement, soulmate for learning new things. I
Oh.
would teach them things, they would learn things, and I
Mm.
would learn things from them. We would have this nice flow. Each one of them had something to give, and each one of them, there, I will always love them, just not love them where I want to marry them. It's not that kind of love. It's love where we're really good friends and we're learning things about each other and learning things about ourselves, and that's enough to have a reason for a relationship. It doesn't always have to be for like, oh my god, I'm going to marry this person for the rest of my life. It's not always going to be that way. I mean, Lisa was different. I died in a car wreck in the 19 late 60s, early 70s because I was a drunk driver. We were in Dallas. I was a mechanic, but I was like an engineer on airplanes, and she was like a socialite. And we were driving home late at night. It was wet on the roads, and I was driving fast because I had a powerful car, and we flipped the car over. We died by drowning in this convertible car that with white wall tires and green. I know everything about it. When I go over a bridge and the weather's kind of crappy, she has to look at her phone. She gets nervous. Like we know that our light was cut off. So this life now is like we met. We're literally like carrying on that life now. We're carrying on from where we left off in the last life. You see what I mean? But we're younger now.
So base so basically
And I'm not an aircraft engineer. So,
so
it's different.
basically you're it's even better. You're an energy healer. But the thing is, you because the progression of that lifetime wasn't finished, so you needed to finish off that
I
karmic
think
cycle, or no?
if she's now, this is a funny thing. I went to York University knowing fully
Mhm.
meet my soulmate. I knew I was going to, in my
What? I'm sorry.
20s,
What? What?
went to York University. I was with
Mm.
someone else at the time, but it wasn't working out. And
Uh-huh.
when I was at York University, I knew I was going to meet someone really
Uh-huh.
important. And she's going to be very pretty. And I was going to be very smitten with her. I knew I was going to meet her. The thing, Lisa was supposed to be in the same program, in the same classes as me on the same day, the same year, but she got pregnant a month before school started. She got pregnant in August, just before school started, or it's August, July or August, where she had to school, even though she was going to be there. And she got married to the guy, and they had two kids, and she had that whole thing. And I remember feeling that I went to York, and I was like, I didn't meet the person I was meant to meet. So I met my secondary relationship, which is the wife I married. She was secondary. The one I was supposed to meet, I never met. And I knew that there was something that happened. There's a reason why I didn't meet her. So now, fast forward years later, she's got two kids. I got two kids. This is like 22 years later or more. We meet and we just carry on as if we had met back then. But then, when I was my 20s, I was very immature, very mature for her age. We would
Mm.
not have met. We would not have done well. We would have loved each other, but it would have been a shit show.
Oh, really?
Like I was not mature enough to focus on.
Really?
Yeah, I was kind of a ladies' guy. I liked lots of girls. She was like, she's like the guy to marry for the rest of my life. That was her focus, right? So I don't know how we would have been at that time, even though we were supposed to meet. And it was probably a good thing we waited 20 years to meet. So like I was supposed to meet her this life. We were supposed to carry on, but at what age and what level of maturity, I don't know. But I'm very glad I went through the hardships I did. I have a much higher respect of women that I do now than I did back then, 20 years ago. I have a different ego structure. I've got a different. I was trying so hard to be normal back then instead of being my true self, and normal being this fitness guy and this big ego and all that stuff that I was trying to project because I was comfortable with that. I'm through heartbreak and through the dissolving of my first marriage. I went into my heart so deeply that authenticity of who I am was there, and I don't need to act this way or be this way. I can just be myself. I can be silly, I can be funny, I can just be myself, and that's perfect. That's fine. But during that time, I was trying hard to be everything but an energy healer, but trying hard to be not um, so compassionate towards other people. Right? 20-year-old boys are 20-year-old boys, and I was in fitness, so you can just
Really?
imagine what kind of a jock I was at the time, and it was all about lifting weights and low body fat. And, what I mean, it was a different time in
I
my life.
I know those. My I have a question. So sorry. My question is, when you are like, let's say you have a soul path, you have this assignment, you're supposed to go where you're supposed to go, right? And suddenly, does it happen that shift happens? So you're supposed to meet, just like you said, you and Lisa, you guys were supposed to meet, and then suddenly you don't meet. You meet someone else instead. And then it diverges into multiple options. And you're just like,
Yeah.
and you get very confused because also the other person could choose not to choose you before you meet.
Back then, this is when I still had my brain injury. So I wasn't vocally as elegant as speaking as I am now. I know I can speak properly. I can really focus and get the words out. Back then, I would have to really focus, and my sentence structure would be a little strange. I spoke strangely. My head and my mouth were not working at the same speed,
Mhm.
and this was part of that brain injury. So when I when I
Get
met
that.
the person who was then my wife, I was kind of brain damaged. I'll admit I was a little brain damaged. I wasn't as smart, and on oh yeah, I
You
had
were brain
spinal
damaged at
meningitis when
that
I was a
point?
kid. I died a few times. That's my story. That's my childhood.
I'm sorry, what is
Yeah.
that? What? This is so
It's
interesting. It
okay.
was
It's okay.
going so
So
well on
no,
Mind
so I
Valley.
was
Please tell
18
me
months
more.
old,
I'm like
and
so curious.
back in the 70s, there was there
Mhm.
was meningitis that was going around in the states where I grew up, and I got spinal meningitis. Well, it
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
there have been talk that it was an infection, but it
Uh-huh.
doesn't really matter. I almost died or died. I'm not sure. They brought me back with the paddles a few times. They had to put this like insert into my heart to keep my heart alive because it was dying all the time. Like I was not supposed to survive. So that, just as you had your hardship story, I had mine. The problem is my brain didn't work properly. Had my brain worked, I would have been an architect or an engineer this life. Like I know that. So by me having a brain that didn't work properly, I couldn't do math properly. I couldn't do physics properly. I couldn't do the mathematical things I would need to be an engineer like I am every single lifetime. So this one, by me having this
Wanted you to
disease,
do
by me having
something
my brain
different.
not working, it meant I had to use my right side of my brain, my creative side of my brain, so much more, and my intuitive side of my brain so much more because my brain didn't work. So thank you to that disease, that issue, that I was a little brain damaged until 2003, and in 2003, around the time my daughter was born, or just after my daughter was born, I took Body Talk, and in Body Talk, one of the teachers and my brain parts snapped together and I was fine after that. I literally remember my brain working the next day properly, speaking properly. Well, my vibration of where I was in terms of my self esteem, which was very low at the time, was a big
Wow.
match to my ex wife. And then what happened is my brain started waking up. I was reading, I was studying, I was doing energy healing, I was focusing on all these interesting things that I was developing. And every time I developed something new in me, she got very scared. She didn't like my change, she didn't like my ability to speak properly. She didn't like how my self esteem was rising up and hers wasn't. So we just became more and more divergent to a point where we were not even on the same vibration. So as I went to um,
Really?
developing my self esteem and learning, she went into anger and fear and judgment. And she's still, from what I see, she's still stuck in her anger and her flat Earth society ideas and her, you know, heavily Christian ideas and how dare I become a, Jesus like. And oh yeah, I trigger her like no end because I am who I am, and that's not who she signed up for. She signed up for me being just the normal strange guy that she met who was, having problems and having issues with things. You see, so as I got healthier, she got in that range,
So basically, because of this, you could suddenly snap out of a relationship because you
Yeah. And
recover,
when
your
someone
vibration is
there's
going
a
upward.
lot of times when you're an energy healer,
Really?
if people aren't secure in their energy healing abilities and who they are, they will generally find as they're an energy floater person, they'll find someone who's a rock. And they think, well, I need this rock to be grounding and bring me back to reality. They think they need someone who's the opposite of them for balance. And really, truly, it's the opposite. You need someone who's exactly like you versus someone who's the opposite. And a lot of energy healers, I can't tell you how many people that are sensitive that have married a guy that's like just a rock. He doesn't believe in anything beyond the end of his nose, and that, or he's heavily religious, and that's enough for him, and he doesn't believe in any of this crap. So they'll marry the rock because they think that that's going to be balance for them. And really that's just hurting them. And really the balance is finding someone who's just like you, who sees the world fundamentally the same way, and that person can just fly and this wonderful relationship full of all this joy because they're carrying the same joy. They have the same perspective, and we should be with someone who's just like us or enough like us and enough divergent from us so that we're in that flow and balance. Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to ask one last thing. I wanted to ask, when you are living as a spiritual person and you are going into this new, like you've become, let's say you've awakened or something like that, what is the best, how do you let go of your past and move forward?
Well, if you're saying that the past, what happens yesterday has bearing on today, then that's just a belief system. Every single moment of every day, we're pulling to our new reality towards joy and love and interconnection, or towards like the adverse feelings and negativity. It's, where our thoughts are, where our focus is right now determines where our future goes. But there's this great, that's I think it's the word aphorism. There's this the ideology that says focus on becomes your reality. Focus
Mm.
on the idea of waking up every day and say, today I'm going to be successful. I'm going to work hard and be successful. And if success is the focus of that day, you'll be successful at being successful, whatever that is you're doing.
Oh
You
my
understand?
God.
If being successful is important, then I guarantee if you spend every day focused on being successful and whatever you do, you will be successful because that's the focus.
Wow.
So what you put into is what you get out. If you wait for the mirror to smile back first, it won't. You have to smile first. You've got to put the energy into something. Now, there's always the other analogy I use is horsepower versus torque. So a car engine creates horsepower, but that engine move the wheels is torque. How much? And there's a discrepancy between the two. It's how much effort you're putting into doing something versus how much you actually get out of it. And you want to make sure that the energy you put into something is being reciprocal. It's being, so if you have an amazing idea for a book
Yeah.
and you just let it die with you and you don't tell anybody, that's not doing the book any service. But you have an idea for a book and you're really passionate about this book and you tell everybody about this book, and then you find a writer who wants to go write that book with you, and they write it, and they happen to have a friend who's in the movie industry and would love to read this idea for a screenplay, and then you and her turn this into a screenplay, and then, oh my God, it gets picked up by MGM, and MGM's now making your screenplay, and they want to offer you a huge amount of money for your idea. That's taking that thing, that belief, that idea, and you're running with that thing. And as you're running with it with passion, eventually it's going to get some traction. So other people are going to believe in it too.
Oh my
And
God.
that comes from business, that comes with passion, that comes with anything, that if you affect people with what it is you do, you're going to affect their lives. You're now responsible for the shift in their life from that idea or that thing you do. So, and it doesn't matter if you're a healer, or it doesn't matter if you're an entertainer. It's a matter of, can you affect people? Can you make them feel what they need to feel or experience what they need to experience? And if you can, you're going to be a valid person in whatever you do.
Oh my God, this is so, so good. I think I so needed to hear this. This is so deep and so impactful. I think sometimes we're the product of whatever's in our surrounding, and it really hit me deep when you said that. I'm so grateful, Orion, for the session today. One last thing that I wanted to ask you is, how can people find your social media, your service? Because personally, I've gone to Orion many times. I would love people to find you. How is the best way to find you?
Well, the best way, I do have social media presence, but honestly, I couldn't tell you what the names are of those. But what I can do say is my name, Orion
Mm.
Mott, OrionMott
Mhm.
.com is the best way for them to find me, and all my information, my contact is there on the contact page. So that's probably how people should reach out to me. And also once they use my phone number to text message me, that's the best way to reach me, as versus calling me, because I get a lot of mystery calls on my phone, so I don't always answer them right away. I get a lot of I get a lot of phone calls from fake UPS people to China to the CRA coming to like arrest me. My phone number, because it's on a website that's popular, it gets a lot of fake phone calls. So I'm not really good at returning phone calls, but I do return text messages right away. and then make an appointment to get on a phone call.
I
With people.
totally understand. Yes, I get a lot of those fake phone calls too. I wanted to thank you for your time today, Orion. I think it was so beautiful, all the things that you said, and it can really deeply impact people when it comes to their souls and their recovery journey. So with this said, I just want to thank everyone for attending this podcast, and may you please be well, and wishing you all a beautiful day. Thank you so much. Bye bye for now.
Take care.
Thank you so much.